Macakuvoo Ali El Bey, LIWebTV.com, 110 channel internet television network, coming to you live out of Freeport, New York. I have with me today on our program, On Point, straight to the point, on point, the distinguished family of a very distinguished rap artist, Dougie Fresh. I have with me his father,
Hammurabi Bey,
his brother,
S.O.A.Q the Lyrical Miracle,
and his nephew, a very distinguished young man. And tell our viewing audience your name, sir.
Imhotep-Abdul-Kadir.
Imhotep-Abdul-Kadir. I'm going to start with the elder, out of respect and out of tradition in our community.
Hotep.
And the tradition in our community dictates that before one speaks, to ask permission from the elder, can they speak? Can I continue, sir?
Yes, you may, my brother.
This is the father of Dougie Fresh. Those of you who know the rap industry know Dougie Fresh, but you don't know the father. So you have an opportunity now to hear from the father the foundation that was laid in order for the structure of the family that now you have the opportunity to meet to come forward. My brother.
Yes, how you doing? My name is Hammurabi Bey. Let me correct that. My name was Vernon Miles, and I converted to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and is now Hammurabi Nesba Bey. And I live my principles, which you'll hear my grandson talk about, of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. That's how we have to travel. And I'm pleased to be here on the TV.
Macakuvoo Ali El Bey, otherwise known as Macakuvoo the Moor.
Hotel.
And I greet you, Udama Akuyur, Lion of the New Dawn.
Islam.
And as you've heard me say, the lion is our consciousness. And the dawn, the new dawn, is the resurrection of that consciousness. And as you heard the elder say, he's with the MSTA, the Moorish Science Temple of America, which comes out of the Kemetic sciences that were translated by Noble Drew Ali. And Noble Drew Ali is a contemporary of Elijah Muhammad and Farag Muhammad and a number of other early pioneers of the liberation consciousness movement. I'm going to say that again, the liberation consciousness movement, not the liberation movement. Because the liberation movement, the so-called liberation movement in America, sought to be part of the American mainstream. The liberation consciousness movement seeks to develop a new paradigm for a society of our people that will ensure our spiritual freedom. Brother Ben.
Yes, brother. I'm glad again to be here.
Thank you, brother.
To bring my grandson and my other son here. We've been traveling around speaking on a subject that I use called low self-esteem, which carries us a long place. Also, the study of etymology, which my son took me to a class with Dr. Biddy, and I'm so glad he did. It gave me a better read on reading, how to understand words, where they come from, which drive you back to culture. In order to study etymology, you have to go back. And on the way back, you start learning things that you never heard of before. So we study that, we teach that. We're teaching in the school district in Mount Vernon in Westchester, New York. I taught 5 classes, 5 days a week, from 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock with a lunch break, with children who clapped for me when I left, who teachers this year I didn't have a problem with. Some people I taught things to, and some knew what I knew, but they can't say. In that system, they're not allowed to tell you these things because they are already mandated to do their own specific jobs. So we've been brought in by Parents Against Teen Violence, the 3 of us, to teach what we know. And we got great response, so much so that the high school wants us to come in to do a regular program with the children who are being detained in school. And this is a problem all over the country.
Indeed.
Since I traveled with my son, I know that this problem is all over. and this is miseducation. We have to understand that you're being miseducated, that you cannot read. Most people who are out there who think you can read, I can show you that you can't read. You know something, and I didn't know it either. I had to go back to school in 1977 just to learn phonics. I had a problem before that. So now I read much better. Studying etymology and always loving my people, I get an opportunity to spread this love. So I'm very appreciative to being here on your TV show.
Indeed.
I appreciate that. Now, you heard the brother say a couple of things here, and I hope you weren't sleeping when you heard it. Because some of us out there, we sleeping with our eyes open thinking we wide awake. But the brother said, number one, he was taken to an etymology class by his son. That's significant because we get caught up with the parent-son module.
Indeed.
Where the son can't teach the father.
Complexes.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And then you heard him say that when you go into etymology, it takes you into culture.
Definitely.
It takes you into culture. Now that's significant because right now, we got folks walking around talking about they African American.
Mm.
And you heard me say this before, there's no such thing as African American.
I second the motion.
No such thing. African American is a genetic mutation. It is not an ethnic group. Okay? So now, culture is something that's very significant because culture drives your economy. What do I mean by that? When you have cultural characteristics, as the Chinese have, as the religion of Judaism has, cultural characteristics, because Jews are not an ethnic group.
Indeed.
Okay? You need to understand that. Asians, Chinese, Japanese, Caribbean people.
Indian.
Okay? East Indian. Because the so-called Indian here is not the Indian.
We are not in India.
We're not right. We're not Indians. Columbus was lost. So when we call ourselves, when we talk about we Indian, how you gonna call yourself a name that somebody that was lost called you? That means you lost too. So culture drives your economy. What do I mean by that? Culture, you have cultural characteristics, artifacts, items that you have within your culture that you have to purchase. So it spurs an economy from one person to the next, from one person to the next. So-called African Americans don't have a culture.
Indeed.
It's a pseudo-culture, okay? And then you heard him say, now I'm breaking down what he said, so you can understand it, because you're the viewing audience, and I don't want people to get confused about what this conversation is about. Then you heard him say that the project that they have in the school system is dealing with people who are not being educated, although they go to school every day. Although they go to school every day. And the construct of what they're teaching is not being taught in school. But you heard him say that when he finished with his class, the students clapped for him because they were getting something that they weren't getting anyplace else. Now, this brother is a part of that project, so give us some insight on the festival that you have.
Indeed.
Coming out of that project.
Yes.
And how you're going to be moving forward with that.
First, I want to say thank you again for having us. The reality of the missing intellect on the TV is being seriously and immediately replaced with intellect on the internet. So our inwit is on the internet. We're not going to have to worry about what's absent on TV. I share with the young guard, don't turn the TV on until you see a mode or a modem of yourself in its positive form. So keep turning the channels until you can land on something that's saying something about you in a positive light or erecting something that you didn't know about your people, otherwise pour water on the television. That's serious talk. There's the motivation that we have is based on the analogy of culture. Coaches at this table. Why? We have grandfather, we have uncle, we have father, we got son. That's called culture. Why? Whatever Pop knows, we're not going to be able to not know, because culture corrects it. In the absence of that culture, Noble, is exactly what you're talking about. It's mayhem. That phone call's coming in for you. It's mayhem. It exists. When that mayhem does exist, we see our children shooting at each other. We see our children dismissing each other's value. We also see our children on a cutthroat level.
Could you hear me?
With that existence, we truly fail. We fail because we don't have knowledge of who we are, what we are, when we are, where we are, and why we are. We don't know. You think that's not important?
I'm in the middle of...
For an instant, the value of that taken away has reduced us from nobles to niggas.
Come down
From nobles
right.
to niggas in an instant of the absence of culture. So in that case, I want to share with Pop. Thanks again for being in our life. Thanks again, Imhotep, for being the reward of the life. And the balance of culture is threatened by a system that calls itself the education system. Imagine that. The education system. Well, when we examine the word, and I would ask for anybody in the listening audience to examine the word education and put it under etymological scrutiny. When you examine the word education, it does not read, nor does it mean the value of that which someone puts in you. That's called indoctrination. But the word education, in its main principle, means that you find the genius inside of the person and help to pull it out. Isn't that the job of the counselors? Well, we've seen many counselors in the school system that we've been through, and this year alone, we taught over 5,000 children in 5 different schools that were yelling and screaming our praises to come back. They wanted to find out what church we belong to so they can join. They told their teacher to their face, and the teacher agreed that we don't want you to teach us no more. We want them to teach us. And we love the teachers. We give them, we go into the school with a gift. It's not a chip on our shoulder. We do realize that the information that we have, 99.9% of our people do not have it. So it does look like we're coming from a different place, a different world. But we coming with love, peace, true freedom, and justice. No, but you can't beat that. So we leave the misguided teachers with etymology books, brand new, with CD-ROMs in it they could download for the entire school. So it's not my knowledge. It's not Pop's knowledge. It's not Imhotep's knowledge, and it's not your knowledge. It's the world's knowledge. And if we get the knowledge, then we can get on the square to redeem ourselves in the humanity as it's supposed to be.
Let me just say to my viewing audience, first let me apologize for having to take that call. That's another guest coming into the studio, very important guest that we're going to be doing some things with, Reverend Robinson, a young dynamic woman who's going to be doing some work with us on domestic violence and domestic violence victims. So I want to apologize for having to have to take that phone call. She may have to call me back again. So please don't feel I'm disrespecting you. But I want to take what he says and let young brother expand on that. Imhotep, those of you who aren't familiar with the Kemetic culture, which is ancient Egypt, Kemet, Imhotep was the architect of the Saqqara pyramid, the step pyramid, or Murkut, as it is known in the language of Kemet. And the languages of Kemet is what we have been taught to misnomer as hieroglyphics. It's really Medu Neter, spiritual words. So Imhotep was the architect of the step pyramid in the Saqqara pyramid. He is also the first healer. And when those of the modern day doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, it begins with to God and Asclepius. Asclepius is the Greek name of Imhotep. So we have with us today the namesake, Imhotep. Welcome, my brother.
Hotep Mighty Moral.
It's on. Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam. I love that I am on the show today. As we know we have to bless to the God of Imhotep, which is the God of medicine. And now we have something to give to you by this program. 100 channels. And are you guys ready to hear a poem? Because I bet you will hear the word yes coming out of the answer of this question. Because I have a serious poem for y'all. And as you know, Imhotep is the person that built the step monument. So, I am going to give you this poem, and it will be knocking you off your feet. So just before I give it to you, be lucky and put on some security outfit, because it's going to knock you off your feet. I am a man, born both proud and brave. Never answered yes to boy, because boy equals slave. I am a man. Trust me, I've checked from head to toe, and I've been assured of such, even though some may link my size indirectly as inconsequential, incorrectly. Yet, I am a man whose time has come, as we like to shine for everyone. My mother's nurturing and endless care ensured a man will always be here. My fathers have built the track to erect this uncompromising spine in this man's back. I have honored my mothers and fathers, so my days will be longer and stronger. The Honorable Noble Drew Ali has set me on a course in principles, then passed me the torch with love, peace, truth, freedom, and justice. When practiced daily, my destiny is uninterrupted. I am a man. You will soon find I can do anything. Man means mind. The ability to think and reason, who's reliable, strong, and built for all seasons. My great-grandmother Pearl Townsend whispered into my left ear, a real man is astounding. All that I can dream, all that I can see, all that I will do, all that any man can be, must be me. When you look beyond these deep brown eyes, you'll see what I've been up to in my world. I am a giant. Hurry up and find out what this man is all about. I am a man, always faithful, to never be ignored.
Tap.
Yes.
Tap.
Good mark of yours. Light of New Dawn. So, I hope you reflect on that for a moment. Because in that delivery, we saw the consciousness of this young man at work. We saw his thought process and his enunciation of terms that even some of us have difficulty speaking. And yet this young man is not even 8 years old.
I'm 7.
That's right, he's 7. Now, for a 7-year-old young man, you know that in the White House right now, the President of the United States is a man of color. What does that mean to you?
Because even though he's not the darkest color as us, still he's a great president. And I knew that Barack would be having 4 more years as president. And since he is 4 more years, the next play, I hope he has another. Because if he does, he's going to be president. Because if it's 4, because it's 1, 2 days. Next 3rd day, it's going to be good. 4th day, that means he's going to spend 100 years there. Because it's 4 years. If it's 4 days to get to 4 years, he's ultimate president.
Got you.
Yes.
Got you. So what do you think? What do the other children your age, what do they think about Barack? And are they inspired by him?
Some people are inspired by Mitt Romney. My 2 that inspire me is Michael Jackson and Barack.
That's serious knowledge.
Because those are the people that helped Harriet Tubman enslave us. Because all the people, Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Barack Obama, and Harriet Tubman, plus Michael Jackson, all had a huddle, and they knew what to do. And they unenslaved us.
Now, did you have to take when you say unenslaved, does a person have to take off chains off of your body? Or does a person have to do something different to unenslave you?
This is what they do. They take the chains off. First they have to open the cage up. Then take the chains off your body. And then they come and put you in a boat with them to drive. They tell you where their home is. And then you get them back to where they normally live.
So how many people you think have got the chains off their body and the chains off their mind?
Well, 350 people.
Whoa.
That's all that they got. But all the other people were not colored as dark as this. And we have a brother that's black as this paint that's up here. Black. He's my big great-grandfather. And he's 101. Older than a 72-year-old. Guys, a 40-year-old, you should be in college, and you should be in college high school, which is taller than his.
Okay.
But he's supposed to have a minimized and an ultimate job. That you have to. You see the people that have been enslaved and they got their foot cut off and their arm cut off and one eye out and their tooth punched out. All they do is he makes all the ears, the eyes, and all the other parts of the body to put them back on.
What do you think?
And they order the body parts from a store. It's called Bodies of Building.
You know a lot. Let me ask you this question, brother. How important is it that you study every day? Because
Very important.
It seems like you are getting a lot of information, and your information is relevant to what's happening in the issues today. How long do you study? How important is it that you study?
It's very important that you study. Because, listen, if your mom or father, if your mother or your father did not let you study, you'll be totally dumb. And when you're a 14-year-old, you have to go back all the way to kindergarten to learn what you have to learn. And before you even get to kindergarten, you gotta be at home school.
So tell me something. That poem that you read, it was said at first that that poem may be a little bit bigger than who you were, and it would be maybe a difficult thing for you to challenge, or a challenge thing for you to
Well,
manifest.
Father, before you even say that, I need you to show the proof, and I'm gonna ask who did that. Did you do that? Did I do that? Or did he do that?
You did what?
Did what? I would have to say we all did it, but I want to know what you're talking
No.
about.
He's the one of us said that this poem is too hard for this little young man. So which is the young man that you think is too hard for?
Well, I don't think it's too hard for you, and I'm gonna share with you this.
But I'm gonna go look for the person that said it. It's me, you, or him. The choice of three.
So how do you find out? How do you know that someone told you that, said that about you?
Because I have a great memory.
But you wasn't there though.
I was there.
No, you wasn't.
Yes, I was.
No, you wasn't.
I was at your house.
No, you wasn't at my house.
Yes, I was.
And what do you remember?
You don't. I remember.
Your father told you that.
Man, listen. I came up to your building, and you told me that poem is too hard for me, in particular. So
I told that to your dad, and your dad told you that.
yeah.
Right. But I see your dad work awful hard to get you to do that. And that's one of the things I want the TV screen to see, that the only reason you see what you see here is because he's restrained.
Indeed.
And this is what's not happening in the schools. You see, if we do this in school, every child can be just like him.
Indeed.
So in certain schools, they turn out what? They turn out a bunch of scholars, because that school is set up to have scholars. See, so when we go into the school district, we go in to do exactly what he has with everybody's child. Everybody's child can learn. But if we allow them to miseducate the children,
Indeed, that's the product.
they're going to be the gangbangers. You know, they're going to be the ones who are going to hurt your child. You understand? If we don't get into those schools, like we discussed with the mayor the other day, we got to go into early in the schools and start changing people's lives, changing the teachers, the principals.
That's why I see that you've been effective. What you're saying, your point is well taken. I see that you've been effective with the teachers. The teachers are the light or the radiance of the school. And for you to come in and for your first minute outshine their light, you also come with a great humility, because you're not coming to hurt anybody, but you're coming to share with them that they too could use a dose of education and realignment, because of the curriculum that's being taught is based on a result. And you know the result when you first walk in the classroom, that our children are going to end up janitors, toilet scrubbers, and the low-level workers of the world with low self-esteem.
And fill up the jails.
So what do? You come in with love, peace, truth, freedom, and justice. And you share with the teachers that you too were miseducated, but they at present are miseducating from their position of sworn allegiance to this misrepresentative of the entire school assessment.
This is some very pertinent information, because commonly we get caught up as a people in this whole leadership quadrant. We need a leader. And I frequently say that there are only 3 black men that we ever need to have paid any attention to. And all of them are among the ancestors right now. The first one is Toussaint Louverture, because Toussaint laid the foundation, the blueprint for building and securing a
A
nation.
nation, an individual, a nation. Indeed.
People need to understand that, because Toussaint was fighting against a general of Napoleon. So that means when he defeated Leclerc, he defeated the Napoleonic army. Napoleon only suffered 2 defeats, one at Waterloo, which is the most famous, and the other one in Haiti against Toussaint. The second ancestor that we need to pay attention to
I'm
is
listening.
Marcus Garvey.
I'm listening.
Is Marcus Garvey.
You got my full attention.
Because Marcus Garvey laid the blueprint for economic development. The third ancestor that we need to have paid attention to is Elijah Muhammad. Because Elijah Muhammad spoke about the paradigm that you just finished speaking about, which is we must take responsibility for the education of our children. Those are the only 3 black men that we need to have paid attention to because they laid blueprints. And what does an architect do? An architect follows a blueprint.
And makes it.
And makes it from the blueprint what the design is supposed to be. What is the design that our young people are supposed to be?
The cultural norms is what you're looking at.
Right.
I agree with what you're saying.
Okay? So, the paradigm from which we construct the consciousness of our young people, see, we're not building young people to be leaders of tomorrow. We're building young people to be leaders of the millennium. And how long is a millennium? 1,000 years. So what we're building, we're laying the blueprint for our children to be millennium leaders, not the 21st century leader. The millennium leader, because that carries the consciousness from generation to generation to generation. And that's what we have to lay the foundation for. And that's what our children are grasping for. That's why the children that you impact on when you go into the school system, I can tell you where they sit. They sit on the edge of their chairs.
Indeed. Can't sit down.
Okay? They're on the edge of their chairs.
They're the first participants to read. When we ask for some volunteer, they are so anxious to share with us that the correctness in these 5 minutes have helped them to correct years of off-roading. And I go as far as saying that it's intentional off-roading. That's a bold point. And I go as far as saying it because I have years of proof.
You said off-roading?
Off-roading.
Okay. Okay.
Serious detour from excellence in humanity, and it's done intentionally so that we can become the murderers of society, the misfits of the society, public enemy number 1, the abusers of our women, with not being the protectors of our women. We have the same potential to protect our women as anyone on this planet.
That's right.
If we made our mind up to do so. So I've seen what you're saying. Now, when you gave us those 3, I didn't want to throw out 3. You know why? Because what you said is beautiful. And I just can't hold my breath but to say Malcolm, Noble Drew Ali, Medgar Evers. I want to keep saying more. You know what I mean? In all actuality, we need not a number. I see Pop moving. I pay attention to Pop's movements. The elder wants to speak. I just seen his movement. Now I'm going to subside and give it to him.
Yeah, I just want to not beg a difference because in everybody's mind, you have your 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6 persons. In my world, as my grandson says, in my world, and my study, I look at Noble Drew Ali as a leading person of Elijah, of Master Farad,
Indeed.
and Marcus Garvey.
Daddy Grace.
Now,
Farrakhan,
Daddy Grace,
Farrakhan.
all of them people came from out of the studies of Noble Drew Ali. You just have to study to find that to be true. Now, in some of my studies, it said Marcus was a forerunner for Noble Drew Ali. Well, he was, but not in Moorish science.
Right.
He was a forerunner because he knew
Business.
how to do the business
Indeed.
stuff. There
Indeed.
was nobody greater than Marcus Garvey in the business. But the cultural stuff came from Noble Drew Ali. And in my studies, I had to study that. One person was born in 1896 and the other one born in 1897. So that makes one person 11 years older than the other. So in my studies and my pictures, I see the prophet, and I see Marcus Garvey, and Elijah and his brothers in that picture. So and we have to know that all of this, some of the people we talking to came from out of that realm. The 5%ers came from out of there.
Sure.
all the people you're talking about, they came from out of it, except for before him.
Gotcha.
Tucson is another thing that I learned when I started studying about Santo Domingo and Haiti, which I didn't know until I started to study.
That's a great thing.
The same landmass, that you have two separate people on there, but we don't know why there's two separates. When you study, you'll find out that Santo Domingo was a conqueror.
There's more.
And that fight that you're talking about, that's why they never let the boats come in. I used to watch and say, why they won't let the Haitians in? Well, I'm not gonna let you in if you've been beating us up. So,
and you have the method.
Yeah.
And you have the method to teach the babies to do the same thing.
So that's why I think when I say low self-esteem, that's what that means. If you don't know nothing about yourself, your self-esteem is low.
Right.
I know something about myself, my self-esteem is high. And my reading ability is higher. You see? So we have to make sure that our children learn something about us and not about George Washington and all these other people without learning about ourselves. If they're a part of it, yeah, you get a piece of them, but where's you at?
Got you.
Now, I want to address that because, and again, let me apologize to my viewing audience for having to leave the set. I had to make sure my arriving guests had gotten off the train and was able to locate our studio here at 45 Church Street in Freeport. And at this point, I'd like to ask Reverend Dr. Robinson to come and sit with us for a moment. Now, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Thank you. I'm glad you made it.
Thank you.
Part of this discussion touches upon a very severe disease in our community. The disease of low self-esteem. And that disease feeds into a behavioral abnormality that results in abusive behavior toward others, particularly our women. Particularly our women. And as a consequence of that, our children suffer. Dr. Robinson is a guest here today. And she didn't expect to be in front of the camera today. Let me just say that. So she probably wants to smack me upside my head. But she is working on a very significant project. And she's formed an organization called Mothers Against Domestic Violence. And with that, I will let Dr. Robinson explain to you what it is that has put her in that vein. Dr. Robinson.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you, Macakuvoo, for having me, and please call me Ish-Time. The formal name of the organization is Mad Mothers Against Domestic Violence. Mad Mothers Against Domestic Violence. And this organization has been in operation for about 4 years now. I started the organization in response to a personal loss and tragedy that I experienced on a personal level, primarily with the loss of my 2 children to domestic violence. My first loss was encountered in August of 2009 with the transition of my oldest son, Jason Dixon, who died at age 28. My second loss occurred 6 months later with the loss of my only daughter and my youngest child, Aja Dixon, at the age of 23. So as you can see with the time frame involved, it hasn't really been 3 full years with the loss of Aja that I've experienced this tragedy. My initial response to the loss of Aja was one of outrage and horror, and I don't think I even processed it, but I just went into action mode and decided that enough was enough. When I say domestic violence, what I mean by that is we were a family system that was plagued with domestic violence. I'm a survivor of DV. DV stands for domestic violence. I was married and in an abusive relationship for 15 years. Both my ex-husband and I were clergy, members of the clergy. We're both graduates of Boston University School of Theology. So we were, quote unquote, a family that didn't look like a DV unit. We were a family that appeared to be up and coming, upwardly mobile, and protective of our children. However, the pathology of domestic violence, as we now know, is no respect of persons, socioeconomic status, race, color, creed, or religious origin. It is just a pathology that lives and breathes within family systems based on learned behaviors of abuse that are abusive. My two children, when I make the connection between their deaths and domestic violence, what I have done systemically is trace their problems or dance with violence, which is what I call it, back to their early stages of development. Jason had a drug problem for 10 years. Subsequently, everyone wanted to say he died from drug abuse. But I knew as a parent and as a clinician that Jason's problems, and we look at what comes first, the chicken or the egg, of drug abuse came from his dance and enrollment within our family system, which was so abusive. And in fact, Jason basically died in response to his desire to medicate his pain. Had it not been for the abuse, had it not been for the violence, the drug abuse would have never occurred. Proof of that is the death of my daughter, which is, I felt the Spirit was knocking on the door of my life and my heart and my mind and my spirit and my soul and bringing them all into one cohesive unit with Aja's death, where he just, bam, just hit me upside the head and said, this is abuse. Aja was not a drug user. She was a theater major on her way to NYU. Tisch School of the Arts. Aja was a prodigy. She was a chess master. At age 3, Aja was acting. Aja won several awards for playing chess right in Central Park. Aja was, quote unquote, the golden child. And ironically, 6 months later, Aja found herself in a holding cell in Corsicana, Texas, self-medicating from pain, where she died of a drug overdose while awaiting to be booked in because she was responding to all the crises in the family system and subsequently took her life. So my final response as a parent was to jumpstart my engine and go into action mode to get the word out to other parents, to get the word out to the community that, hey, domestic violence kills, and this is what it can look like. It can look like a situation where your child is using drugs, where your child is acting out emotionally, where your child is acting out verbally, where your child is acting out physically, and you can, for some reason are just looking at the behavior, not looking at the signs. But at the end of the day, if you can go back and look at your family patterns of behavior, I'm talking about 2 grown adults in a household. How did you treat one another? How did you treat your children? How did your parents treat you? How did your mother and father relate to you? What messages did they send to you about you? And of those messages, which were positive, which were negative, and what did you bring to the text of your family system? What did you impart into your children from that toxic family system? If it was toxic, that put them in that space of self-destruction and degradation. And so that's what happened to Jason and Aja. And I basically started MAV because I wanted to turn my anger into action to educate, especially clergy. I didn't mention my ex-husband and I were clergy. So we were members of the ecclesiastical community, quote unquote, a caring community that is supposed to care for the lives of God's children. And subsequently and ironically, our 2 children in the house of God were snuffed out in 5 minutes due to lack of love, intervention, and systemic care.
You just touched us in a way where we just want to say first, we're glad you're here as a survivor of this, but we have experienced exactly the same thing, and your point only goes to prove the science of the injury. And what you did in respect to your research, you did for your family. And you showed and proved the reality Now, if you take your research and just add an extension on your research, you would see that all of this comes from slavery
Yes, it does.
and self-hate.
Yes, it does.
So you are the modern day Miss Fix-It, where the problem lands on your lap. And most of our sisters and brothers who see this outside, they say that it's their personal problem. I'm glad you did not keep it personal. It ain't your problem. This sits on the laps of us as a people, from which all problems have only been solved from us as a people. We don't individually succeed, and we don't individually solve problems. It becomes a community problem. We look at it, and we either got to deal with that person,
Got to deal with it.
or we have to excommunicate that person. The jail is not our cultural thing. We do not send our people to jail. There's no historical reference to us using the jail as a medicine or jail as a solution. If the person was that bad, then they had to get dealt with. But the issue is that we are the modern, damaged people. And it reflects itself in low self-esteem and the actions of all of it. And I'm glad that you saw the injury and wrapping around the ecclesiastical community. They're supposed to be coaching for the injury, but how do you coach when you're injured?
Well, one of the things that we have to reconcile is what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is healing. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about healing of people, and healing is in 4 dimensions: spiritual, psychological, emotional, and physical. Modern medicine deals with the physical aspect of healing. Religionism, and I say religionism, is supposed to deal with the spiritual aspect of healing, but most religion is indoctrination and not spiritual.
Gotcha.
When we talk about a spiritual healing, our spirit has to be healed through the reconnection with our culture.
Say it again, brother.
Our spirit has to be healed with the reconnection of our culture.
Indeed.
See, we sit here speaking a language that is a derivative of our captor.
Speak it again, brother.
Now that's healing.
We speak a language that is a derivative of our culture, of our captor. The consciousness from which we address the conversation is a derivative of our captor. We have to remember that all that we were was made criminal. Our culture was criminalized. I'll never forget the scene in Roots when Kunta Kinte broke free from his slave prison camp called the plantation, ran to get his woman, who was his woman, notice I said, who was his woman in Africa, in Akaboo land, runs into the kitchen. Notice where he ran to get her, into the kitchen where she was being held captive. She looks up and she says, "Nigga, what you doing here?" He says, "I come to get you. We going back to Africa." She looks at him and she says, "Nigga, as long as I eat good and as long as I sleep good, this is home." Got into an argument with her. And them two rogues that was trying to re-imprison him heard the argument. He breaks free from the kitchen and starts to try to outrun 2 men on horses. They catch him and cut off his foot, and he was Toby after that. He was Toby after that. We have to And that's why you heard me say, Udama Akayu, a line of the new dawn. Because the spiritual healing that this sister has to bring from the avenue of pain that she suffered from the loss of her loved ones has got to embrace what these brothers are doing when they talk about releasing the shackles of low self-esteem that bind our children to a classroom where they are being taught to hate themselves because they're being taught by teachers who don't care nothing about them.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, sister, I'm glad to
Great
met
point.
you. We all have somewhat similar stories. My grandson's father was murdered last year, but before the murder, he beat my daughter up. My daughter loves him then. She still loves him now. She went into a place to be protected. She came out of there. There's a lot of abuse going around because people don't know themselves. They want to strike out, and they strike out at the first person in front of them. That's not the one they're mad at. It's easier to do that. So if you ever want to smack a dog, make sure you smack the collie and not the pit bull. So that's how we operate. We get the person who's going to give us less pain. On drugs, the drug addict takes advantage of his family first. Then he goes into the street. But like you said, my brother, if people want to do the church thing, if they want to do the Muslim thing or the Buddha thing, you have to follow that with your culture. We're not following with culture. We're just going and being given what they gave us, and it's never going to work for us until you put the cultural stuff in here. Like the sister said, they were both involved in the church, but everybody is damaged in this country. And the ones who are trying to get out are the ones who understand that this is about culture. So when you go back, you have to make sure that the people get the cultural part, and then whatever they pull out of the Bible that's scientific, they use. Whatever you pull out of Islam that's scientific, you use. Whatever you pull out of anything, you use. But this whole world is only about science.
That's it.
It's the way you blink your eyes and why you have liquid in your eye and why you got blood and water and urine and all that stuff. You understand? That's what this is all about. But someone came up with a good game and tried to teach us some things that really doesn't matter. And now we find ourselves on the back end.
With no solution.
No, we got a solution, but we just got to put it forward. And the solution is culture. If we introduce culture into Islam and we put it into Christianity, this will go away. Because you know why? It's because the cultural part is going to take over. And out of whatever's in the Quran or the Bible that's not real, that's not scientific, you're going to get rid of it.
Indeed.
You can't tell me that everything in the Bible is good, and you can't tell me everything in the Quran is good. You understand? And you can't tell me that most people who speak, that everything they say is good. Because good means what do you know and what you don't know.
That's
There's
progressive
been
for
plenty of
life.
times when I've said things that I later found out that I only said that because that's what I was told. So now what we're learning more in science is that you have to investigate what you've been told. So you can now say, I know what I was told by the brother who told me that.
Indeed.
So we don't use him, we use the science. So we have to put the science in this whole thing. And if we don't do that, we're going to still keep stumbling and falling and trying to figure out, well, this sister was in the church and the brother was in the church and the same still happened.
Right.
Well, what you just said, the sister was doing now, she did it in post-mortem fashion. She kind of emptied everything on the table and re-examined it and said, whoa, you can't say that little committee who killed herself because of drugs. It's bigger than just what you see.
Yeah.
He has an injury, but now I'm analyzing it. I'm scrutinizing it and putting it through who, what, when, where, how, why, which. And dissecting it has to have a reason.
Absolutely.
The epicenter of both of their deaths, including yours, hers, his, and mine, right now, as we die. The only reason why we die because we haven't scrutinized the protections of how to live.
Exactly.
So you're doing a great job, sister, even with the pain. And like Pop was saying, we all can relate. We all can relate to the end results.
Yeah.
Whether it's our brother that's on drugs or our mother who's out there in the streets doing unfavorable things and bringing a woman's nature down, or our nephew who gets shot by the police and he is a police, and you know we've seen the ugliness, or our grandmother who doesn't share with us that the deed to the house is important to pass on to the family, but in the fact it gets passed on to an enemy.
To the state.
So you know the self-hate is a driving force. We have to take the keys. We have to unlock the steering wheel, flatten the tires. Self-hate should not be available to drive us into the end road when we haven't even looked at the perfect, pure science that our ancient ancestors have left us in all different forms of life around the entire globe. Whatever we've touched is golden. We have to seek that back and get it back. The ecclesiastical community is something that we had to venture into during a serious process in American chattel slavery, which every one of us had the option, not the option, the mandatory forsakenness to have to participate in something that was new. We all had to go to church.
Or die.
Or die. Or your family member be hurt or something else. It was under threat and it was under duress, and the paperwork shows it. So nowadays when we see that involvement, the change of our personality, Aunt Jemima now has to wear a perm. Look at Aunt Jemima on the breakfast cereal box. We used to have curls in her hair with a scarf on. But the modernization for appealing purposes only does not make the contemporary form of the ecclesiastic or any other religious form of giving us religion. It doesn't embellish that with culture, which has the solution.
That being said, this is Macakuvoo Bey with the father of Dougie Fresh
Hammurabi Bey.
and the brother of Dougie Fresh
Brother Soap, the lyrical miracle.
and Queen Mother
H-Time Robinson.
Esther
H-Time.
S.Time Robinson
Hotep, sister.
and young Imhotep. We thank you for tuning in to On Point, LIWebTV.com, 110 channels on the internet. We got a lot of channels. We have a lot of space for content. We're looking for people to come on board and help us to do sales, marketing, and production, and to build this into a major television network that can tell our story.
Yes.
Myology, the study of self. Mind for self and ology for the study of. So we can speak myology and give a myological perspective on our conditions here in this Western paradigm of culture. Again, I'm Macakuvoo Bey. I greet you. Udama Akayur, Line of the New Dawn. See you again.
Hotep.